Hello, I was going to do a game review tonight. I got up early, came in early, was all set to go, got completely swamped by work because the people I work with a few notable exceptions, are unkind people. And by unkind people, I mean I don't want to say what I'm actually thinking, so let's just move on from that topic. So the game review is not happening tonight. But what I am going to do is I'm going to try to push through my Q&A because, as usual, this just keeps piling up and piling up. So I'm going to burrow through this. Now, I am making another new rule with regards to my Q&A. I hate to keep doing this. I hate to keep trying to do this to truncate these videos, but the truth of the matter is time is just becoming so much of a concern. So to in addition to the fact that I don't do repeat questions now, which I have seen several of ever since initiating that rule, I am also now going to I'm debating how best to deal with this. I'm debating just doing a section being like these games here, because I get a lot of questions which basically amount to, have you played this game, and if so, what do you think of it? Have you played this game, and if so, what do you think of it? Now, I have played many of the games on that list, but most of them I don't have much to say about. Either it didn't catch me, or I didn't have time to play it, or maybe it's a game I actually haven't played. And there are a lot of games on that list that I have not played and I have a moderate level of interest in, and I have nothing against, but I don't have the time or the money or the facility, so it's on the tertiary wish list, which, you know. So the bottom line here is that I'm going to start truncating a lot of those into, here's the games, and I never have anything additional to say to them. It feels weird to be like, what do you think of this game? Well, it looks interesting, it looks good, the mechanics are fun, and yeah. What do I think of this game? Well, it looks interesting, it looks good, and the mechanics are fun. I just feel like I keep repeating myself over and over. So in that line, I have three right off the top of my head. That would be Nox, In Cold Blood, Star Trek Bridge Commander, and Burnout 3 Takedown. I've not played these are three that I included in the I have not played. I have nothing against them, and I don't have anything else to add. Now, someone did ask in this bundle of games for a Curse of Monkey Island review. I'd have to go back and replay it, which is more a time issue than anything. I still own it, obviously, but going back and playing that wouldn't be a bad thing. I will go ahead and put it on the review list. It's going to be a little bit down on the list because I already have 700 billion other game reviews to do. So there would be that. Now, next question here, or I suppose technically the first question here, would be, have you read the Revan book? Referring to Revan from the KOTOR and the Tor series. Yes, I have. It was interesting. It expanded upon his storyline quite a bit, and I did enjoy it. I also read the comics, for anyone who's wondering, and am fairly well versed in that storyline, and I have nothing but good things to say about that. I think they did a good direction with the character. I think they could have done slightly better personally, but that is, I admit, a matter of preference, not a matter of quality. They did a good job with it. Let's see. Next question here. Are you considering obtaining some hosting space or a domain for your content? I'd love to read your stories, your D&D modules, your backgrounds, etc. Forums would also be a good place for that. This is the kind of thing that has literally never occurred to me. Then again, the podcast thing never occurred to me either. Oh, I'm sorry. I must break for just a moment. The podcast is supposedly working. Anyone who can search through iTunes should be able to search for Arshay and Gaia. The new one is up. Converting those takes into a format that can be hosted on Blip and then immediately transferred to iTunes does take some time, but you can find me on Blip directly, or you could just find me on iTunes now under Arshay and Gaia, so just so everyone knows. I'm going to put that in the description, I think. Sorry about the delay. As far as the forums thing, as far as the hosting space, it's never occurred to me. I'm not one who usually shares my stuff, as weird as that probably sounds. Any of my music or my books or my D&D modules or whatever. I mean, I was actually working on one just today. I was hammering out exactly how much mana certain abilities cost based on whether they want you to maximize them or not, and blah, blah, blah. And so I've never considered it. I think I'll leave that one in the air for now. It's just something that, I don't know, it feels like something that I wouldn't really see as people being interested in, if you follow me on that one. Next question here. Are there any webcomics you frequent and recommend? Yes, there are, and actually I'm going to make this really easy. I'm just going to open my comics thing. I read XKCD, Captain SNES, VG Cats, whenever it updates, Order of the Stick, The Non-Adventures of Wonderella, Adventures of Dr. McNinja, Sinfest, Sam and Fuzzy, Real Life, Questionable Content, Penny Arcade, Nerf Now, MS Paint Adventure, MS Paint Masterpieces, different one, Misfile, uh, what's the next one? Sorry, it's kind of hard to read here. Earthworld, another one that hasn't updated lately. Darth and Droids, very excellent comic. Dark Legacy Comics, that's a once-a-weeker. Control-Alt-Delete, I haven't been into that lately, but I still read it. Awkward Zombie, another one that updates very infrequently. Anti-Heroes, another one that updates very infrequently. And, of course, the Daily Blink. I think there's a couple others on top of that because I actually have different webcomics for home and for work. But I do recommend all of the above for various reasons, which I'm not going to go into. But I do enjoy them all. If I had to pick one, I'd say Captain's Nest, by the way. And I mean that sincerely. Next question. What do you think of the different species in Mass Effect, such as any lists a few, and which of those species are your favorite? And if you were dropped in the Mass Effect species, which species... If you were dropped in a Mass Effect species... If you were dropped in the Mass Effect universe, which species would you pick, excluding humans, of course? I do actually find the cultures and the mindsets and the philosophies and all that of the species very interesting. While in-game, in function, they do seem to be a little homogenized, the more you read into the background and the more you read the codex, you find out that their society is actually quite different than ours, and their lifestyles and their everyday existence are very different, and I like that. I like the way that works. Just to use the most obvious and pronounced example, the Asari method of procreation, and the whole cultural expectation that exists around that, not just with Asari for that matter, because it affects all other species that they mate with, you know. There is something about that that is fascinating and well designed and well thought out and believable, and I like that. Of those species, I would probably say Turian is my favorite, which is, well, maybe not Turian. Actually, I would probably lean towards... No, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say Turian. Let's just say it was a close one between Turian... Turian and Solarian. And then probably Asari next, but the Asari kind of... they kind of had what came to them coming, I'll admit that, in Mass Effect 3, but let's just move on. The final part of that question, which species would you pick? Oh, I would definitely pick Turian. Now, it's kind of funny because culturally speaking, in terms of mentality, I am very not Turian. While I am very organized, I am very much a pro-thinker, if you know what I mean. I very much believe in the concept of being able to question my orders because I have a brain and I want to interpret and understand myself rather than simply do as I'm told. That is me, admittedly. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just the way I am. So I suppose you could say I would be very Garrus in that respect. Not full renegade, because I'm still trying to help with people and work with people and be diplomatic and all that. But if you gave me an order and I disagreed with it, then oh well. Not following that. Sorry, I got other things to do. You know. But I would love to be a Turian. Moving on. I took too long there, didn't I? Let's see here. Whoops. Scroll down a bit. Next question. What are your top favorite episodes of Farscape and Babylon 5? I also noticed that Alpha Protocol was not on your list of coming reviews. It's kind of unrelated. Yes, Alpha Protocol is not on my list of upcoming reviews. That's because the actual list of reviews, which I have over here, is not the one I have posted. It's a much larger list, and it's going to take a long time to go through. But it is on the list, and along with a lot of other games, which I'm just looking at now, my goodness. I think I might do that review tonight, actually, because I can do that one on the fly. Anyways, let's move on to your real question, which was about favorite episodes. Now, you'll forgive me because I am not good with episode names. And everything I'm about to say is a complete spoiler, so anyone who has not watched Babylon 5 yet, or Farscape yet, please cover your ears or skip to the next question. I'm going to give you a moment here just to talk. Okay. There are a few moments in both... excellent episodes in both series are so numerous that picking 1 or 3 or 10 of my favorites is actually very difficult to do. But we're going to go with sheer emotional impact here. When Zahn died in Farscape, I actually cried. That's not a joke. I actually shed tears. This was recent when I saw this again because I was showing it to a friend. And that was so emotionally powerful and so impacting, and it was a good episode. The episode where Crichton dies, Crichton A or B or whichever one it was, immediately after flinging a chunk of a star at a Scarran dreadnought. That was an amazing episode. That was an incredible episode. The episode where the Scorpius is defeated for the first time on the command carrier, where Krace and Talon sacrifice themselves to take it out. Another fantastic, amazing, epic episode. There are so many. Can I list the Peacekeeper Wars as one? Because I would do that as well. over on Babylon 5, again, speaking of episodes I just watched recently, we've got one of the ones in Season 4, I don't remember which one it is, where Londo goes to Jakar and spends like 5-10 minutes pouring his heart out to the guy and saying, I want to toast a drink together for the first time in centuries. I'm sorry, it's hard to do that accent because I try to slip into my actual Romanian whenever I do that, but it's the first time in centuries we have had something to drink about together. Why can we not, do this as brethren for the first time and the first steps to this United League of Nations and blah blah blah. Wonderful scene. Okay, hang on. Okay, gotta get back to this accent. Wonderful scene, beautiful episode. The episode where Mr. Morden is is talking with Veer and trying to do his own whole shtick on him, and Veer gives that awesome response. In the darkness of Zahadum, I believe, is one of those episodes. So many of the ones that had to do with the primary plot arc, just I actually can't pick one. They're all amazing. So, wow, is all I got to say at all that. And I apologize for taking so long because they're just so good, all of them. Next question. I suppose we'll just move on here. What are your top 5 boss battles? Now that's actually really tough because we're talking across all games of all time ever. But boss battles that really stick out for me right now. Zeramus, or Zeromus, depending on your pronunciation, back in Final Fantasy IV. I remember when that sort of thing was still new to me, and there was a certain atmosphere that I had never felt from a game or a movie or anything prior to that moment of build-up and just tension, dread, and excitement, and defiance, and it was just the most epic finale leading up to the fight, and then the fight himself. I have said for many years, Zeramus was one of the last actually difficult Final Fantasy last bosses. They had kind of a string there, where the last bosses of the FF series were kind of a joke, because they were moving more towards the super optional mindset. And in case you're not aware, very quickly, a super optional mindset means you make the storyline relatively easy at all points, and then you have optional bosses and then super optional bosses or boss that are there for people who still want the challenge. Well, back in FF4, that idea was still very new, and while they did have some optional bosses, they didn't actually have a true super optional, so Zeramus was still very difficult. It was a properly difficult fight, though. Some fights should be difficult. When you fight the embodiment of Zemus's hatred, given manifest form, that should be a difficult fight, And that's what I loved about that. Next favorite boss fight, Sephiroth, but not from Final Fantasy VII. Sephiroth from Kingdom Hearts 1. I still say to this day, in my personal opinion, this is just my opinion, that is still the most difficult boss fight I've ever personally fought against. I have beaten him once. Once I have defeated Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts 1. And that was everything I wanted that fight to be. That was so incredibly cool, awesome, difficult, fun, amazing, intense, engaging. All of it. Loved that fight. Next fight on the list would probably... give me just a moment to narrow this down just a little bit. Because there's so many. And there are so many truly epic boss fights, Like, for example, the fight in, let's just say, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, the fight against the End. Now, I'm not going to say this is one of my top 5, but that is something that was an incredible, engaging, fun, interesting, innovative, It was awesome, the way they pulled that off. And, of course, some of the classics jump out at me. Bowser from Super Mario Bros. 3, the Mother Brain in Super Metroid, which I think I'm actually going to go ahead and put on the list. The Mother Brain fight in Super Metroid was awesome, and so fit the Super Metroid theme of telling a story, making a mood, and generating atmosphere without a single word of dialogue. They did it without any text at all in that game. With the exception of like the initial text scroll to explain the background, there was nothing. And it was awesome the way they pulled that off. So I'm going to go ahead and add the Mother Brain to that list in Super Metroid. There's one other one here on the list. I bet some of you could guess this one if you know me at all. Kel'Thuzad in Noxuramas in Vanilla WoW. Yes, I was one of the few who actually got to him. Would you believe I never beat him? We tried many times, and something happened to interrupt my WoW career at that time. They ended up getting him down. Titans of Azeroth did eventually get him down, but I ended up dropping out of that because, oh, that's right. I remember now. Real life got in the way, let's just summarize. And so I never actually got to beat him, but Kel'Thuzad was an amazingly designed boss fight. And actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I am taking that back. He was still an amazing boss fight, but that's not the one I want for the list. The WoW boss I'm putting on this list is actually the Four Horsemen. The original Four Horsemen was the most brilliantly designed boss fight I've ever seen in my freaking life, in MMO terms. It was amazing. It was incredible. It was beautifully designed. It was incredibly difficult. It was not artificially difficult. It required skill and execution and timing and coordination, and it was beautiful. And I did beat the Four Horsemen. Wonderful fight. Wonderful fight. And for the fifth, now I have to think about this one for just a moment, because there are many that qualify for this. I almost want to just say as an aggregate. But I think the one I'm going to go ahead and pick, if I can count all the phases of a boss as one boss, Ganon from Twilight Princess. The fight against the fake, the possessed Zelda, the fight against the Ganondorf, the fight against Ganon, the beast, the fight on horseback, and then the fight on foot. That escalation was one of my favorite examples of how to do proper escalation in combat in video gaming right there. I usually use that as my example. The idea here, in case you're wondering, is most villains, and indeed this is true for Ganon as well, are big and flashy and showy and do the big raw, thing in reverse, because when they're doing that, they're holding back. They're not focusing, they're not trying, they're just kind of idly doing their thing, right? Because they're so strong or they're so good that they've never had to really try, and as you beat them, they shrink down out of the one-winged angel form, to use the trope term, rather than into it, because at this point, they're starting to actually try, until you get to that final fight, which is just you and Ganondorf and your swords, and that's it, and that's when he's like, alright. And the way he does it, he just stands up. Actually, it's at an angle like this. He just stands up, slowly rises, pulls his sword out, and he's like, alright, I'll actually try with you then. He doesn't say that, but that impression is there. Alright, I'll actually go at you with what I can really do. And that is the hardest fight of all of them, too, and it's beautiful! Loved it. Now, there are a few other ones that I could put on this list. In fact, there are a few dozen other ones I could put on this list, but you asked for the 5, and that's what you're getting. And that already took me way too long, so let's go ahead and move on here, shall we? Ah, goodness. Do I think Legion should have been romanceable in the Mass Effect games? No, I do not. Now, obviously, as I've said many times, I don't really prefer romance to be in the game, only with 2 exceptions ever, basically. Well, 3 exceptions, sort of, but 2 exceptions for real. I've never really thought adding the romance option adds anything to the game. However, that has nothing to do with why I say this. I say this because Legion is the least likely to engage in anything even remotely ascribing romantic intent within the ME universe. I could see you getting together with Mordin. That's not even a good example. I could see you getting together with Zaid more easily than I could see you getting together with Legion. I could see you getting together with EDI more easily than I could see you getting together with Legion. I could see you getting together with the Prothean more than I could see you getting together with Legion. And I'm not trying to sound insulting, so I do apologize if that's the way I'm coming off. I'm not going to explain in detail, but because I'm trying to push through these, I'm already taking too long. The point is that Legion's personality, in my opinion, personalities I really should say, did not lend themselves towards the kind of thing where creating a bond based on emotional friendship is something that they would consider to be a viable outcome. Or in other words, I don't think it would have worked. I don't think it would have made sense for the character. I think it would have been detractment rather than adding to. That's just my opinion, though, as usual, I suppose I should say. Next question. What do you think is considered more neutral in Mass Effect, both Paragon and Renegade, or being neither? And how about in the Fallout universe? Same question. I don't think there's much as far as neutrality in Fallout. I'm going to go ahead and answer that first because that's easier. As anybody who's played the game extensively will tell you, staying neutral basically requires doing good, doing evil, doing good, doing evil. It's very difficult to choose a choice that does not affect your karma at all, or doing a quest that doesn't affect your karma at all. And I actually do think that is to the detriment of the game personally, but let's not get into that whole veil of hay there. The point is, I don't think there really is such a thing as neutral in Fallout. I think you're either sadistically, hideously evil, or you're awesome and good. Sorry, I'm a little prejudiced here. I admit it, though. I admit it. You're either very good or you're very evil, and there is a very severe dichotomy here. And I could discuss that at length, and I believe there's another question later that will make me discuss that at length, so let's just leave that be for now. As far as Mass Effect, I think Renegade is slightly more neutral, because Renegade is more interested in the results than in the path, at least in my personal opinion. More interested in the expedient and what'd they call it? Cold calculus, I believe? That's one of the phrases I really liked in Mass Effect 3, one of those scenes I really liked. Cold calculus. Renegade is someone who tends to lean more towards that mentality than, well, let's try and save everyone we can, and really put the effort into that because, because that's the way we are. Or, let's try, or actually, let me put it that differently, because I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Let's try and get along with everyone as best as we can. Let's try and talk our way through our problems. Let's try for diplomatic solutions, rather than simply forcing the issue and getting what we can get done in order to save the galaxy. So, next question. I'm sorry, I meant to stick this up with the games. Would you review any God of War title? I could do that, and in fact, I'll go ahead and add that to the list right now. Where's the G's? There we go. God of War series, which will primarily be focused on 2, I can tell you right now, because I've played 2 more than I have 1 or 3. Next question. You said that there should be a lore reason given why you are so strong in any given game. Whoops. Do you think they did that in Morrowind, Oblivion, the Fallout games, and Skyrim? Yes, all the way across the board. I think all of them. Elder Scrolls, for those who aren't fully versed in the lore, sort of have an automatic win for the player character, because the player character is the, I think they call it the hero, actually, of that particular scroll, and that's why each game is a different scroll. Elder Scrolls 5, Elder Scrolls 3. That hero is tied to that scroll, and that scroll is tied to that prophecy, and all three are tied together in such a way that it's kind of meta, to be completely honest with you. For example, the reason your character in, let's use Morrowind as the example here, the reason your character starts at the moment, actually, you know what, I'm sorry, let's use Oblivion, because this is much more obvious and much easier to explain. You have to look at time non-linearly for this to make sense, okay? You get the Elder Scroll as part of the Thieves Guild questline, which is canon, by the way, in case you're wondering, but all of them are. You get the Elder Scroll, you are attached to it, you read it, and because you are the one who has read it, it is now written that that is what this time has become. Because prior to you reading that Elder Scroll, time was morphic, as indeed time is in general fairly morphic within the Elder Scroll's existence. So all of the history within the break of that time period, which is the duration of Oblivion and the Oblivion Crisis, was morphic until you read that scroll, at which point you were locked into this point in existence. Now, if you're not following me, let me put it this way. Your character technically didn't exist prior to being found in that prison cell. Now, this is only one interpretation of the events, but this is how I personally view it. Your character literally did not exist. Your character's beginning of life was when you started there in that cell, which makes a lot of sense both in lore and in game terms as well. And then all of your adventuring, all of everything you do is leading up to the moment when you read the scroll, which then locks you into this time section. And this is why I kind of mentioned you have to look at time non-linearly for this to make sense. And because that goes into the future as well. I'm probably getting into too high-minded stuff, so let's just stop here. But the point is that concept of you being the hero who is tied in with the Elder Scroll, which is locked in with this period of history, means you are literally, for all intents and purposes, the author of this period of history. Which is very appropriate because as the player character, you are the one changing how the world works for this period of time. And so it works in a very in-lore and in-game perspective. So yes, all of the Elder Scrolls games have pulled that off very well, every single one of them. but especially Morrowind and Dawn. In the Fallout games, that's a little different. In Fallout 3, you were the guy. You were the lone wanderer and or the vault dweller. Or, no, you weren't the vault dweller. You were the lone wanderer, weren't you? And in Fallout New Vegas, you were the courier. Now, in both cases, they never really explain why or how you became the guy. So, I don't actually have anything to add there. I don't think they explained it well enough. It never bothered me. It was never the kind of thing where it was like, well, why am I able to do so much more than anyone else is? Not just because the world scaled with you, but because other people were also fairly strong, especially if you're playing on a proper difficulty level. So you aren't necessarily the guy, as in the only guy. You're simply the guy who happens to be at the top of the food chain, if you follow what I'm saying here. You're not that far off from the guys beneath you, you just are at the top. So it made a degree of sense in its own way. It wasn't quite as well explained as some other games have done, in my personal opinion. Next question. Do you think in... Oh, here it is. Do you think in Fallout 3 and in Fallout New Vegas, are you evil or renegade? Told you this was going to be asked again. Now, I personally think you are hardcore, no really sadistic, cruel evil in Fallout 3. I can't speak to New Vegas. I actually can't. I haven't looked into it nearly as much as far as the evil side. But in Fallout 3, I can speak to with experience. Not personal experience, but experience from friends and a few things I have seen myself. The one quest that made me refuse to do that ever again. And a lot of YouTube videos. In Fallout 3, like I was saying, there is no real neutral ground. You're either a saint who is trying his best to save the wasteland and do everything you can in order to make everything better, or you are... I don't even have an equivalent. You are Senior Psychopants over there. Obscure reference. And you... And the evil you do in that game is ridiculous. I mean, yes, there's some of the things that I can actually talk about, like, slaughtering a whole town, or sacrificing them to the vampires, or selling people into slavery, or how about pretending to help the slaves and then agreeing to help the slavers and then leading the slavers to the slavees. I'm sorry, I'm very against slavery. Slavery is one of those things I have an absolute zero policy thing on, always have. So that is me. But then we have things like, I don't know, blowing up a city, a fully occupied city because it was an eyesore. Or how about convincing the ghouls to be allowed to let in so that they can brutally murder all the denizens within? Or conversely, being convinced by all the denizens within to go brutally murder the ghouls yourself. I don't do that quest these days. There's just no good answer there. And I just avoid it nowadays. That is my good answer. Not doing it, see ya. So... You are evil in Fallout 3. And all of this is not even mentioning the one thing, which I still haven't told. I've actually been asked what was the one scene. I'm debating answering it, because I don't even like thinking about it. It's so insidious. It's so cruel. It's so sadistic. It's so utterly wrong. It has to do with the slavery thing, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But let's just move on. You are not renegade in Fallout 3. You are not... Oh, wait. There's one other thing I wanted to mention here. This is actually important, because this is relevant to the overall point. In Fallout 3, in most games, like Dragon Age, let's just use that as an example. In Dragon Age Origins, whether you are a evil person, a good person, or anywhere in between, because there was the ability to come off as any of the above, you were still saving the world because you were what I prefer to call intelligent evil, which is someone who has a brain and understands that making the world a better place makes the world a better place for him or her or whoever, And so saving the world was very much in the warden's best interests, even if it was an evil warden. You follow me? Now, in Fallout 3, you are stupid evil. And the best example I can give you this right now is the fact that you are not, no matter what you're doing, trying to save the world, or in this case, the capital wastes. Because if you can decide to put that virus in there. And I don't know if anybody has ever looked into the effects of that, but even the immediate effects, people were dying left and right already. People, everything was just all the towns and hospitals were getting more and more crowded. And there's a very strong sense that within, I don't know, a year at the absolute most, the wasteland is going to be empty. because they're all going to die from drinking the water that you poisoned, including you. And this is the really key point here. You are not intelligent evil when you try to destroy the only viable water source in the wasteland. That also affects you. Now, you can go ahead and make the argument that, President Eden lies to you, and he does lie to you, saying you'll be unaffected. But we know, A, you aren't unaffected, because in game terms, if you drink more than, I think, 3 of the Aqua Puras, you die. And B, the Lone Wanderer should have something of a brain, and anybody who thought about it for even a little bit, including myself in real life and many other people, just thought about it and were like, wouldn't that affect us too, because we've already been affected by the radiation, even just a little bit? And that's what this virus kills, is anybody who's been affected at all, even 1%. So, yeah, you're either so stupid you believe President Eden, or you're so stupid that you don't mind killing yourself in order to kill off the wasteland. Now, let's go ahead and make a point here of the fact that that's not necessarily a bad thing to have that kind of option in a game. I'm just highlighting the difference between stupid evil, Fallout 3, and intelligent evil, Dragon Age. Neither one is better nor worse than the other, in my personal opinion. But there is absolutely no question whatsoever that you are an evil bastard in Fallout 3. And, yeah, that's the point I wanted to get across. So, let's go ahead and pull up my timer here. Next question. What are your thoughts on the Dune books, TV miniseries, Children of Dune, blah, 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 blah? I read the books more than I did anything else. I actually haven't read them in quite a while. Of course, I'm well aware of them. I mean, I didn't actually get around to watching the TV series. It is actually on my list to watch. I feel like I say that a lot, too. I might have to make another rule here. But no, seriously, it is on my list. I've already got it ready to go. I just need to watch it someday. Excuse me. I have always had an interest in it. I liked the Dune movie. I loved the Dune books, at least the first 2 or 3, or I guess 3. It would be interesting to see if they continued the TV series into the God Emperor of Dune storyline, which, from my understanding, they didn't cover within the series, and kept going with that. That would actually be interesting. That would it'd be engaging, and I would watch it. I might not watch it immediately, obviously, because it's been like 12 years now, hasn't it, since that TV series came out. But I will watch it someday, I swear. But no, in all seriousness, that would be awesome if they pulled that off, and I would watch it and enjoy it. Next question. You mentioned that the reimagined Battlestar Galactica was extremely well done, but you never really got into it. Oh, but you never really got into it. Is there any particular reason why? I've been thinking about how to answer this best, because there's a similar question later, which is going to be related, and it comes down to how a game or show or movie or book makes me feel. And that's a little bit more ineffable. That's a little bit more intangible than saying, well, the writing was bad. No, the writing was fine. Well, the acting was bad. No, the acting was fine. It's harder to pin down how a thing makes you feel, how a work of art or in any medium makes you feel. But Battlestar Galactica, the series, made me feel uncomfortable, unpleasant, disgusted. It was an unpleasant experience, if you're following what I'm saying. I did actually watch it all the way through, believe it or not. But the only episode I could name right off the top of my head that I actually truly enjoyed was the first one. I don't even remember what it was called. It was like 31 or something. It's when they were jumping away and the Cylons were catching them every 31 minutes or whatever it was on the notch. That was a good episode. I liked that. But every episode after that, pretty much without exception, had something that just made me kind of go, ugh. And I don't know how to explain that. But I do have a way to try, so bear with me if you will. I've talked before about the difference between believability and a tale. Just to summarize very quickly, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, calling a game realistic is something you generally shouldn't do, because it isn't. It just isn't. However, what most people mean when they say realistic is believable. Babylon 5, Mass Effect, several of the Final Fantasies, a lot of different games, a lot of different series, Dragon Age Origins, a lot of these games and books and movies and whatever are very believable in the sense that if you take into account the level of romanticization, that's a tongue twister, and more importantly, it stays self-consistent, it follows its own rules, and this technology works this way, this magic works this way, however that goes. if it stays consistent with itself and is only mildly romanticized, that's something that's believable because you can see it actually happening. You can actually see that those events unfolding in that way if that world or that galaxy or whatever actually existed, right? A tale is something that is not self-consistent. The tale is something that is here that is not trying to keep track of itself. It is not trying to keep its paperwork in line. It's not taking notes. It's just telling the story to entertain you, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though I prefer a believable thing. To use my favorite example over here, Star Trek, as an aggregate, is a tale because it's not very self-consistent. Some parts of it are, and some sequences of it are, but as a whole, Star Trek is very inconsistent. But there's nothing wrong with that because it's a tale. It's trying to just tell you a story regardless of how realistic or believable it seems. Why do I emphasize all this? Because in between these two, we've got something called actually realistic, and this is what I try to call it, actually realistic. I don't know how many people out there have actually experienced death in person or with someone you know or anything like that. I have on many occasions, and ignoring the obvious emotional and mental trauma of losing someone you care about or losing someone in general, let's just speak to some of the more base mundanities, like the fact that the corpse will start to bloat up and get blue and have pooling of the blood, and and the smell, oh my goodness, the smell. You know, things like that. Medical background, by the way, in case anyone's wondering how I know all this stuff. I'm not some horrible freak or serial killer, whatever. My mother's a pharmacist. My aunt is a nurse. My other aunt is a doctor. Point being, there are a lot of really unpleasant, horrible things when it comes to death in real life. And we all sort of assume this and understand this to some degree or another, but when we see something that is realistic in terms of violence or in terms of death in a movie or game, it doesn't even come close. And that's a good thing, in my opinion, because I don't want realism. The closer you get to that realistic line, the less I tend to enjoy it. And that's basically what I'm going with Battlestar Galactica. It was too realistic. It wasn't too believable. It was too realistic. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the dirty, gritty, unpleasant, itchy, hungry, smelly reality that was being presented in Battlestar Galactica, because I don't like reality in my games, in my movies, in my books, in my shows. I don't like reality in my entertainment. As I've said for many, 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 many years, we're talking going back like at least 20 years at this point, I've been making this kind of comment. I have been saying for many years, if I wanted reality, I'd walk out that door right there, wherever it happens to be, and I'd go have reality, because I can get reality. That's easy. When I want entertainment, I want to be entertained. So this is the best reason I could give you that I did not like Battlestar Galactica: The Reimagining. It was simply too realistic for me. Now I'm going to have to pause and deal with this. So I will go ahead and get this uploaded, and I'll talk to you guys in just a moment.